Welcome to the ZeroedN podcast, where my theory is going up against their philosophy, where my opinions are going up against what may or may not be bullshit. Now let's get zeroed in. So let's talk about me now. Who is Sam? I think it's only appropriate that you guys have a realistic understanding of who you're listening to. So let me introduce myself. Let me tell you where I'm from. Let me tell you why I think the way I think, and maybe you guys will have a better understanding of why I feel like my theory matters, right? I'm from Pasadena, California, in LA County. Some of us just like to say we're from LA, but I'm proud of where I'm from. I'm the son of Loretta Thompson Glickman, who was the first African-American female mayor of a major city in 1980. She served 2 terms, and someone I'm very, very, very proud of. My mother was actually in my 7th grade social studies book, man, amazing. And so, growing up as a child, being very exposed to a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of powerful people, having the privilege of being in the Rose Parade 4 years in a row and waving to people, feeling special as a child, but also feeling very exposed to things that I think others weren't necessarily privileged. But at the same time, I was also going home to a community because my mother couldn't afford to move out of it. A very impoverished community, a community that most of us in my predicament grew up in. A community where in LA we had very strong gang violence and all the above, drugs and everything else. You know the story. It's a very common one for most of us that grew up in communities like that. But through that, I would say I was very exposed to that. But one of the things that I was very exposed to was success. I knew what success looked like. My mother would drop me off at the barbershops every single weekend, and at the barbershop, every single weekend. And Luke's barbershop, Luke Walker's barbershop, man. This guy was amazing. Him and his brother's name was Chuck Walker. I would sweep their floors. I would straighten up their magazine racks. I would run errands for these guys. I would run to the back of the room, back of their barbershop where they had all their broken clippers. I would actually take their clippers, try to fix them, experiment with them. I would go home and try to figure this thing out. To make a long story short, I became a barber at the age of 10 years old. I was experimenting on myself, experimenting on my brother, on my cousins. And I was good enough to start making money at the age of 13. Watch this. My mother turned my entire basement into a barbershop. At 13 years old, I had 3 stools in there, and I had 3 buddies. Myself and 2 other buddies, man, that actually were cutting hair in the basement with me. I taught them actually how to cut. And I was literally running a barbershop at the age of 13. Didn't realize it. I thought it was just a place to cut hair. But as I think about it now, I was actually running a barbershop. But not to dwell on that, I became a legitimate owner after going to barber school at the age of 16, graduating from barber school at the age of 17, officially getting my license when I turned 18. And I ended up about 6 months later inheriting my first barbershop from these 2 old men by the name of HC and DC. They literally were celebrating 50 years in business and saw fit to give me the keys at this celebration. They handed me the keys and told me to pay the power bill. And I was like, what? And they say, yeah, pay the power bill. This shop is yours. We're retiring. They were 83 and 86 years old. They handed over a business that was 50 years old. They had been in that same place, in that same location with the same name for 50 years. Unreal. And so I became a shop owner at 18 years old. That was the beginning of my self-employment, the beginning of my manhood, the beginning of, I would say, my entrepreneurial mindset. I went through a whole lot you can imagine. I actually took over a barbershop that actually had 6 barbers in there already. These barbers were all significantly older than me. I think the youngest barber next to me was 26 years old. Here I am, an 18-year-old, managing a barbershop with 6 barbers in there. The youngest barber is 26. The next barber is like 30, all the way up to like 50 years old. And who is this 18-year-old that Mr. HC and Mr. DC saw fit to take over this barbershop? And so that's who I was at that age. It wasn't easy. I would say if I could do it all over again, there's so many different ways I would have done it. But thankfully, I've been privileged because I've had the opportunity to open up numerous of barbershops after that. I sold that shop in 1999, moved to Atlanta, opened up a shop here in Atlanta with a gentleman by the name of Tyrone Grant. This guy right here, man, taught me the game. I would say prior to moving to Atlanta, I was just, a guy that cut hair. I owned a barbershop, but I was just a guy that cut hair. But working around Tyrone Grant, man, I felt like I became a professional. This was the guy that really showed me the etiquette of the business. He was classy, super professional, super efficient. This guy was about his money. He didn't, waste a minute. He didn't waste an hour. Everything was about getting paid, and he got paid and showed me how to get paid. That lasted about 2 years before I left and opened up the very first Salon Suites here in Atlanta, Georgia. That was in 2001. And I didn't last 10 months. I shouldn't have lasted 6 months. I think my ego kept it open an additional 4 months. But, I experienced being super high on vision, so much so that I wrote the vision down on paper. I mapped it out. This was a brand new construction site. It was a brand new development. So I was able to be a part of the pre-development phase, and got the blueprints drawn up, got with an architect. And, like I said, the vision was made plain. And I was, at this particular time, I think I was about 23 years old, maybe about 23, 24, somewhere up in there. I'm not sure how old I was, but I was young. And going through that process of solidifying the design and being high off of the build out and finally accomplishing a brand new build out in Atlanta, Georgia, and being the owner of the very first Salon Suites, I had no clue how I was going to make money. I thought I did. I couldn't lease a suite to save my life. I guess I was too early in the game when it came to Salon Suites back in 2001. Now it's a thing. Everybody's leasing out suites. If you're in the barber industry or the beauty industry, it's a thing now. But back then, oh man, it was difficult. And so I went 6 months, struggling, trying to figure out how to pay the bills. And, when you're in the middle of a struggle, it's like extremely hard to be creative. And it was one of the worst experiences I've ever had. But I've learned so much by way of it, man. So I say I shouldn't have lasted 6 months. I ended up lasting 10 months. But there was so much, what's the best way to put it? I felt so free when I decided to make the decision to close that place down and move on to the next chapter. It was such a burden lifted. And for those of you that are out here that may be struggling with making decisions when it concerns your business or where you may be stuck, listen, if you're thinking about closing down and shifting and making some adjustments and doing something different, that's something you can't be afraid of. That's something you have to embrace. And there's such a burden lifted when you do so, guys. Listen, you can never be afraid to do something different. All right. You got to know when to hold them and when to fold them. That was a big, big, big chapter in my life. And because of that, I'm the entrepreneur that I am today. When I tell you guys, I know what it's like to fail. I really do know what it's like to fail. I know what it's like to even feel like a failure. Right. But I know how to bounce back. I know how to get back on my feet. I know how to stand up tall, raise my head up, look to the sky. I know how to get myself back into a zone. I know how to zero in.